Alrighty, how's it going, guys? Hank here, right back at you with another short video on the Big Blue Avenue YouTube channel. And as always, please don't forget to hit that big red subscribe button down below. Give us a like, give us a comment. And of course, if you want to follow us on all of our forms of social media, you can find us on Instagram and Twitter at Big Blue Avenue. And Tom and I kind of talked about this on our show yesterday. However, since we both agreed that we kind of glossed over this, I'm going to discuss two of the new coaching hires that the New York Giants made. The first guy that I'm going to talk about is Shea Tierney. He is going to be the new quarterbacks coach. He was hired from the Buffalo Bills staff, and as a matter of fact, he and Brian Dable have some history together. But let me go over his full resume. He was a graduate assistant for North Carolina State, Philadelphia analyst slash coaching intern from 2013 to 2015, and I mentioned that he and Dable had some previous working relationships. They were both offensive coaches under Nick Saban in I believe it was 2017, and he was the Buffalo Bills offensive assistant from 2018 and 19 before being promoted to one of the quarterbacks coaches. So he follows Brian Dable for the past 5 years, and it seems to me that he's one of Brian Dable's right hand men as part of his coaching staff. And I think this is a good hire because obviously he was with the Buffalo Bills since 2018, around the same time that they took Josh Allen in the draft, and he is somebody that pretty much like Dable, he had a big hand in helping to develop Josh Allen into being one of the better quarterbacks in the league. And as a matter of fact, Daniel Jones said he will reach out to Josh Allen on how to run the scheme. So he will definitely have a lot of new things to learn. And I think Shea Tierney is a good coach to hire for that reason. However, I think the bigger hire that we really didn't talk about as much last night was the hiring of Mike Kafka to be the offensive coordinator. Now, Kafka is more of a known name in the NFL, or at least a little bit more known than Shea Tierney. He's 34 years old, so he's a young mind, and I would imagine he'll probably institute some of Andy Reid's coaching schemes into the offense. And this is a guy who has a lot of connections to Andy Reid, too. He was a player for Andy Reid. He was actually a third-string backup in 2010, 2011, and he followed him later on and became a member of his coaching staff. So I think the fact that he's had a lot of experience with Andy Reid should really help. And, there's been a lot of offensive coaches in the NFL that have done very well when using Andy Reid's coaching scheme. Pat Shurmur is an example. And as a matter of fact, I know he wasn't one of the better coaches that the Giants have had, but his offensive playbook definitely helped Daniel Jones that first year. And let's not forget, that was one of the big reasons, and that was one of the reasons they drafted him, was to try to see if he could fit under Pat Shurmur. But then, of course, as we know, Shurmur got fired, so that didn't really work out. So one of the big things is this will be his first time calling the plays as an offensive coordinator. Joe Shane stated during the press conference that Dable will not be the one calling the plays. Other guys that were mentioned as finalists were Pep Hamilton and Chad O'Shea. But let me go back to his resume a little bit. Kafka was a graduate assistant at Northwestern, which was his alma mater, where he played college football. And as I mentioned, it's not really a long resume. He became the quality control coach for the Chiefs in 2017, which was the year before Patrick Mahomes started. That was the last year in which they had Alex Smith as their starting quarterback. Was then promoted to quarterbacks coach in 2018, and he pretty much wore that hat ever since until coming to the Giants. But in 2020, they made him the passing game coordinator. And, rumor had it that up until this year, had he stayed with the Kansas City Chiefs, I think given the experience that he had as the quarterback's coach, I think they were going to make him the play caller, assuming that Eric Bieniemy was going to, take a coaching job from teams like, say, the New Orleans Saints, the Miami Dolphins. But Bieniemy, unfortunately, despite his success as an offensive coordinator, his name still has not been mentioned, and he never materialized as a head coaching candidate, which really is a shame in the grand scheme of things, because I think he really does have a good offensive mind, and I really hope he does get that opportunity. But in the end, unfortunately, that was not meant to be. But as a result for Kafka, he gets his opportunity to call plays elsewhere. And what better place to do it than with the New York Giants? And, I think it's a good thing that the Giants are going to mix in an Andy Reid, someone from the Andy Reid tree to go along for the other guys that were part of the Dable coaching staff. It's a good mix of new ideas. And, Dable in his press conference pretty much said, we're going to try to work on Daniel Jones's strengths. And, by hiring Mike Kafka, I think that sends a message that you're going to keep trying to take care of your quarterback, see if you can put in a system where he thrives. And I'm hoping that'll work out. I still am someone that sees Daniel Jones as the answer as a Giants quarterback. And with a young mind like Mike Kafka, I think that's very much an ideal situation. And look, we know the history of Andy Reid offensive coordinators. Not all of them end up being very successful as a head coach, but he runs a great offensive scheme. Every single one of his coaches, whether it be Doug Peterson or Brad Childress, to name a few, they've both done very well in offensive coordinator positions. And both of them, almost all of his offensive coordinators end up becoming head coaches. Doug Peterson is another example. Whether they're all successful as head coaches is another matter. But as far as developing quarterbacks and offensive schemes, all of them have great track records. So I think Mike Kafka, despite the fact that he's young, it's a good hire. And as I said, he pretty much got his feet wet in the 5 years he spent coaching with Andy Reid in Kansas City. And both of these hirings ended up becoming major wins for the New York Giants. So I'm very excited to see the direction that the offense will be going within the next year or so. And hopefully we'll get to see a change for the better. But folks, that's really all I have to talk about with regarding the coaching hires. Folks, don't forget to check us out on Instagram and Twitter. Give us a follow at Big Blue Avenue. And of course, please don't forget to give us a follow on all of our, please don't forget to hit that red subscribe button down below. Give us a like, give us a comment. What do you think about these hires? Do you think Shea Tierney following Brian Dable is a good move? Do you think that they went the right way with hiring Mike Kafka instead of somebody more experienced like Pep Hamilton? I would love to interact, and we would love to hear your opinions. And of course, folks, don't forget, next Friday, February 10th, will be our last Facebook live stream of the season. Tom and I will get together, and we will be discussing more with regards to the New York Giants and some offseason moves. And we'll probably be discussing some NFL draft prospects as well. We discussed a little bit of that at the end of our last episode. But again, that's pretty much all I have discussed for today. I'm Hank and Dichter, and I will talk to you guys at a later time.